这应该是咱们最后2次课吧，最后倒数第2次了，对吧？哎，能听到吗？
还是我听不见你在说什么。
能听到吗？现在能听到吗？
等一下，我好像是我的电脑有个问题，我就把你这个 settings 来。
OK。现在呢 ？Can you hear me？
好，现在能听到你。
好的。能看到屏幕吗
能看到。
？OK。So I think this is our second to last lesson, right? And we actually make some progress on the graphics, the Rust graphics interface, and the developers actually have also writing some tutorials, which is currently in Chinese, and some sections available in the website. So here's a tutorial section. It kind of goes through how to install the dependencies and the Rust graphics. So if you want to follow, actually, probably in the future you can actually follow this. This is much more like step-by-step setup, and we're trying to kind of walk you through the code and actually try to implement one feature at a time, and kind of explain from the simple concept how to get a node, how to implement a simple widget, record and display step by step. So that is one information. The other one I think maybe is helpful to. I'm not sure I mentioned this before. Actually, to show you how this website is built. So you look at this website, right? It's a static website and it has different sections. Mostly serve as documentation for some kind of technical projects. You also have a blog, right? So some basic static website functionalities. So we use the framework which comes from Facebook called docusaurus, and so this framework actually make the static website very easy. And what you want to do is just writing the markdown pages. So for example, like the documentation section or those tutorials are just markdown text. So they are very similar. They are much easier than HTML, and when the website actually built, it's going to render as a HTML page. Also, like for the blog section, writes those markdown tests. It has some header to configure even the tags and categories. So the way to there's a README. So it is a Node.js project, and if you clone the repo, there are very simple steps. You install the dependencies. So this way, it's going to kind of download the dependencies for those node modules to this folder. Assuming you already have npm and node installed, and then here we have config this website. There's some script: start, build, deploy, start, build. So if we run the start command, it actually we're going to kind of trigger the actual website or documentation website frameworks code. if we do this, it's going to start a server at localhost. So you can kind of preview the. So notice this URL. It's localhost, so you can preview your environment, like your current state of this website. This is also served as like a live loading. So if we change something, let's say we change, if we find a document, if we find a quick start, here we have a quick start section, and the title is quick start. If we change the quick start to like quick start 1, you notice the changes actually happen live. Like if we change it to quick start 2, you notice here like the server actually intelligent enough to detect your file has changed for this folder, and you kind of refresh page. So for the interactive development experience, like this is like a setup. You can get what you see is what you're coding. Also for the IntelliJ, if you have like Markdown plugin, this is like you can also kind of preview the render results, like the different sections with those kind of syntax. Very intuitive. So after we're okay with local development, you can see we want to actually publish this site. So it is a static website, means there's like no actual dynamic content. There's no server calls for. There's no like interactive things, like you fill in, you need to log in, you need to register user, you need to have a password, all of those kind of things. That there's no such things. There's this is public static website. So after that, we run the build. So this build command also kind of npm find this build command from the script. So it is using this underlying docusaurus build. So here what happens, it's actually building this whole website and publish this website to a particular folder, and like under this build folder. So this build folder itself is what the whole website is after it's built. So you see here is a index page, which is actually the entry point for this whole website. And this build folder is then become the root of your static website. So there are a couple ways we can kind of validate that. Like if we go to the build folder, I happen to have I can have a utility to start a server from this folder. You see we actually have a server serving this folder, serving this build folder under this URL. So 8080 for the localhost. So you can see this is indeed like a very self-contained. It contains everything for this website. There are other ways of kind of serve to start. There's some like Python command. You can have I think Python 2 has the HTTP is the exact syntax. Python 3 change their syntax. So there is this one, and this syntax is going to give you also going to give you a server. So this is 8080 again. It's serving 80 again. I think it's solid. Yep. So this is another way of start a local, like a static servers. So you can see that there are those source code, the statics website actually contain a lot of like JavaScript. So those like random JavaScript are kind of generated by this build process. So the framework, the docusaurus framework, handle this generation of the code. So it also kind of packages images, documents, all kind of things. Like you can see it actually, in order to support the paths, different paths, it is kind of generating those placeholders for all those different level of paths. Like this blog, different level of HTML files. And you can see those are actually they are uses of those JavaScript files. So any questions? I also like those pictures. It's kind of reorganize the pictures into this package. So if you want to have a quick and like reasonable website with some like static content, this is a way. The maybe the drawback is you have a lot of JavaScript, so it's relatively you need to have a relatively new browser in order to kind of access this website. If you have a very old browser that doesn't support modern JavaScript, it's going to be a problem. There are like other ways of generating static website. So if you look at just search online, you'll see like different languages has tons of like static website generators. Like each different language kind of showcase their ways of doing that. I think like JavaScript definitely like is very popular because in the web community, people use JavaScript, so there are a lot of Node.js. You can also see the other languages like in particular we are doing Rust, right? You can see Rust also have a few. Like this one. This one is also a static website generator. This one, mkdocs, is a static site generator. So when you're looking at, I think like for this kind of style, like a book and sections, this is generated by mkdocs. It has a very simple format. You have those navigation, like section chapters on the left, and has some search capabilities. So it's also kind of doing some index at the background and other things. So this is another way of generating static website, but it doesn't have like a blog, like a web landing page type of thing. So it's kind of very particular to a book format. This one, Zola, this one, I can actually also use it for like another page. So this is like generated by using one of the templates generated by you have categories and you have tags. So kind of showcase a bunch of ways of generating static website. You can see this one, like this website. This is another way of doing things. So you see there actually it's generated by mkdocs. So this one is from Python. Like you see their official documentation page using the exact same style. So this one is generated by kind of also writing those markdown files. So if you look at our code for the course, I'm trying to open the code. So this browsers, this is a markdown website. It is a it is organized this way. We have document like markdown files under document folder, docs folder, and this index file is what the home page of our like the courses of the course. You can see each section is a markdown section, and we embed a YouTube video as iframe. And each section has its text.
Wait, so is this Java or HTML?
So this is markdown. This is a markdown. So you see this index page is a MD file, which is the markdown language. You see all the markdown language. Like it's a very probably this one. You can see the syntax, like how you can write. So technical documentation, a lot of them are writing.
Oh, okay. So it's like the documentation.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
So it basically has those kind of syntax, like you're using those symbols to. It is styling, like very minimum styling. So if you do this kind of headings, and like you can also create tables and indentations, things like that. So here, for example, we just create a section for our website, and it kind of showing them, it renders them as HTML when it's fully rendered, and you can even have like tables. Also have like code blocks if you're using those three like single quotations and wrap the code. It will have a particular format. So if you look at our lecture, like this particular section, it is exactly what specified here, like time tracking, speed. It renders this way, and like embed YouTube video, like you have iframe here, which is like copy paste from YouTube. So this allows some mixed use of HTML into this Markdown language. So for technical documentation, you need some formats, but you don't need like word level format. You don't need like arbitrary format. This is like a standard choice. If you look at all the GitHub like README files, the first page of software package, the README file, like the actual entry points, the landing page of a software project, they are, I think they all written in this MD, this Markdown format. So so this like Markdown files are like MK is kind of Python package, right? A Python program to generate a static website with a Markdown language. If you look at the lecture last year, it is a different style. So this is a different style, kind of also like a documentation type of website, which has a different visual appearance, like sections on the right and maybe some search. So this one is generated using so-called vuepress. So it is organized in different ways, and but for this framework to use, like I need to create individual files for different sections, like every lecture, like at least in the way organize that, like I create individual files for that particular lecture, kind of by design of the framework. So like where you can see there are a lot of front-end frameworks, right? Vue.js, JavaScript framework for building website, and so WordPress is kind of building on top of that. You can have a static site generator, so you can see the style of this one is kind of very similar to this kind of layout. Right? It's very very similar to these things. We have different themes. So I think that's kind of an overview of like how do you want to generate a website. So people are, you can see like because the web application the web becomes such a medium. People spend a lot of energy, like different frameworks, different languages.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you do the thing where like you know how like in the top right there's like a moon and then there's a sun, and how would you make it so that it's like bright? Like how do you make it so that it's dark and light?
You mean this one? No.
Yeah, that.
This one actually comes from the framework, from this docusaurus framework. So I didn't do anything. Like technically speaking, it's those kind of benefits you get from using those frameworks. So it's kind of out of box. I think the configuration, there are a lot of configurations for those kind of frameworks. So what is framework? Framework is like it helps you to do a lot of those kind of skeleton or wrapping, but it is opinioned. Right? It has its own way of doing stuff. So for this framework particularly, like our framework, we need to configure a bunch of things in order to work. They are like this is a config file, config.js. So this is kind of the entry point for what you need to configure for this website. Like this navigation bar is going to be what appear on the top. So we have this doc section, developer blog, privacy sections. So they kind of appear configured here. We have those scenes on the left, developer docs on the left, position left. We have this lecture talk on the right. So kind of in the code, you specify the lecture and code on the right, and specify those configuration this way, and the framework, this docusaurus framework, takes care of actually generating those code for you to make the website behave that way. Like in order to do that, I don't know exactly how does this work, but it is not a like it's some kind of default option. That's my guess. Right? It's not even appear in this navigation bar configuration. So there must be like some default configuration. If you look at the actual documentation, I believe you may find some clues here. So that's something like you get some behaviors, right? Like out of box if you want this. But if you don't want this, you may want to find the actual option or to disable this. I hope that answers your question. Maybe not. But
so it's like part of the frame.
Yeah, it's part of framework. And for me, I didn't look like deeply into the framework. Right? If you want to deeply customize its behavior, saying, okay, I don't want to particularly look this way, the styles, I don't like it, you need to kind of customize your way to use the framework. Then sometimes the framework gets in your way because you actually need to read their code and understand how that thing works. It may be very complex because if you look at how the generated JavaScript, right, it is doing a lot of things under the hood. So that's a very good question. And so it's always like a balance, right? Which level you operate on? If you operate on, and what problem you're trying to solve? What problem you're trying to solve? Like if you operate on and just providing content for the website, probably you can bear with like this for this project. Mostly, but mostly it's content generation. So we provide some content, and I kind of just using the default for all the styling and the things, like the visual elements. So I'm not too. I didn't aware we have this visual elements here. But if you are like you want to control, if you like it's more like a visual, you want to like full control like, to the pixel level, then those frameworks may not work for you because this framework trying to solve a particular problem. And it's like probably very fast for developer documentation purpose, but if you really want to customize the lookings, then in the end, right, you may come up with your own implementation. Because if you want to do like a surgery to the underlying framework, you got to have like a lot of understanding, a lot of things, and in the end you may find it's designed in a way which actually very hard. You cannot even do that for what you want to do. So for this one in particular, I just just customize the first page with this navigation, and have I think there's another one is this sidebars, which is the left panel, this documentation, this left panel navigation. Like this is developer section, this is the tutorial section, this is the lecture section, so kind of a sidebar configuration. And then those things will link to the files, to this like the blog markdown files. They link, and those documentation section kind of link to those files. They have IDs, So this framework basically provide a very quick way for you to focus on your content. The content is those like blog posts and documentations. Focus on writing those things. And you can quickly get something up and running. So that's like I think a lot of open source project actually use this using like this or similar static site generation tools with some customization. They have like you can do different things. You can definitely change colors and different styles of the things. But that's it. So we can actually look at like hope my spelling is right. This is actually the framework, the home page. You can see it's a lot of similarities to what we have here. Like the layout, you have this button, like I said. You have you also like have version 1 and 2, and this like it's they're also having, you see the very similar layout styling with those different elements, and it also supports versions. So one thing we are not using, like in the local project, we're not using is versions. But the version is a very important concept for technical documentations. So there is a way of so for this there is a way of kind of manage old versions. If you're looking at the documentation, you see those URLs. If you look at the documentation of a particular version, you get actually a different URL paths. So this is this framework is very, very specific to like software or technical documentation, even with like version control considerations. So this is the kind of like, if you want to have something, I want to like have some static website content as like to build a website to showcase something. There are a lot of tools. Like depending on what you're focused on. If you focus on content, may just leverage what existing software is already like state of the art software to provide you, get you up to speed very quickly. So that is, I think that's about the static website. So any more questions?
Wait, so static website, is it the websites like don't? Can you explain that again?
So there's no static means there's no interactions. Like there's no, you can see there's no dynamic interactions. What do I mean dynamic? Like if you go to, let's say if you go to anything you want to, you need to log in. Right? You go to Gmail or you go to anything, you need to log in. It has interactions between like a server, a client, database, that type of thing. A static website don't have any of that interaction part. Like I mean the actual data API calls or those interaction with database or other servers. It just has static files. Just has those files which never change. Like when we actually build this website, all the website content is under this folder. It's this one folder. Everything's here. You don't have any like user authentications, change your password, any kind of dynamic lookup. Like those are JavaScript behaviors. Yes, we get some kind of dynamic JavaScript, maybe search functions, but those are like JavaScript behaviors. All the content, all the information you have are static. Static means they don't change. There's no like, in fact, There's no dynamic content generated from other servers or API calls. There may be, right? There may be like JavaScript, and like JavaScript is a different animal. Like they may have dynamic behaviors, right? You can do some search. You may even call some other APIs from other things. But in general, this website doesn't have a database itself. It doesn't require you to well, there's some cases it's a little bit rough because JavaScript, if you think about JavaScript, it's really a programming language. So there's a very gray line about JavaScript. But if you think about those are just like HTML files, JavaScript, if you think about like in the past, like some of browsers, even older browsers, they don't support like modern JavaScript. So really, you can think about like static website are just HTML files, and the interactions you get is very limited. But for now, JavaScript can do a lot of those interactive things. It is not really calling a server, like getting some data back and forth from database. Right? So the complexity of implement, let's say Facebook or Gmail or like a game, right? Or like game is maybe an extreme example. If you like there like a website games or those kind of, you need to constantly like a multiplayer type of thing, right? You need to constantly going back and forth with the server and get new data, get refresh data, get like a user notifications, right? Like if your friends post something on, I don't know, like Instagram or post something on Twitter or like Snapchat or whatever the hottest social media application is, you get instant notification, right, if you wish to. So those applications are not like static. Right? They have a centralized server. Most of the current, if you look at most of the current applications, they follow this model. Like they are centralized server, and your client is really just rendering the appearance. And static website in a way is like kind of goes back to the older version, like web 1.0, or like the earlier days of internet. Like there's not too much things are like centralized servers. Like if you go to Amazon, you buy like a e-commerce, or like Uber, you go to like order and going to have this kind of service. They have multiple level of complexities behind, and different business logic to support your workflow. But so when you go to like those kind of technical documentations, usually you don't do those things, right? You don't really go into look up, okay, this user, what's their current remaining items in the cart, what's their newest email, right? Like not in a game, you need to constantly look at what's other player status. So for those kind of documentation website, it's very good to be static. That means that you generate all the content and just upload that to a web server. A server just serving the files as is. So I think that's kind of by definition static for the website. There's one caveat, right? The JavaScript is a real caveat, because if you look at like all the static website, even the like those behaviors, right? Like those behaviors, it's you can argue like from interactive user interactive point of view, it's not static. You definitely change something, right? The colors, the styling is changing, but it's really not changing the fact you are not making like a active call out, right? API call, or you're not actually getting information from other systems, right? you all those behaviors is kind of self-contained in those static files. So even you get some dynamic content, right? Like you get even for those like even for those here we don't have a search behavior, but you have like this kind of next previous actions, and those are the magic of JavaScript. But not really magic, it's just calling the browser APIs, like trying to kind of give you the illusion of it's actually doing something dynamic, but it's not really requesting other information other than those static, like those files. And if you look at like even for those search behaviors, if you look at the, even give you 404, this is also like a static. There's some gray areas. Like if you look at those behaviors, right, it looks like not static. Those are dynamic behaviors. Like it does some search functionalities, but those are JavaScript. Right? The kind of the content, the index here, the things you search here, is kind of pre-built in a JavaScript data structure. And every time you do something, it actually gets that locally in your browser. So this is all the things happens from the files you kind of self-contained. There's no other callout. But if you if you go to Google, right? If you go to Google, like what happens here is not that simple. Right? If what happens here, it's actually like maybe call out. Right? And Google server get every keystroke. It is making multiple calls to like different servers, well, like caching and things. So this is not like a static website. Like even behavior-wise, you may think, oh, it's maybe the same, but under the hood is much different. So this, like for those kind of documentation websites, there's absolutely no other servers. Right? It's just a web server hosting the static files. And also that's where like things get a I think huge advancement or improvement over the past many years. Is in the past, HTML page is like the website is, in order to get those dynamic behaviors, it's relatively not easy. Like in the past, maybe like 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, and there was something like I think Google pioneered, like or like Microsoft actually had like they're called Ajax. I'm not sure like it's an old term. Maybe it's like old word now. Ajax, they call like asynchronized, like something like you can make asynchronized calls to support the dynamic behaviors. This is like a web user, web interface, like you're doing those callouts and you get data to refresh the Google map. So in the past, right, it's very hard to get some dynamic behaviors. Like those behaviors, you need to make a call to the server, you get something back. But as the current years, like JavaScript really becomes a Z language, right? Not one of them. It is become Z language, like get popular for building web applications. And a lot of like dynamic behaviors start to as like enhancement. It's doable more and more at the front end, like to even have those kind of search behaviors, like pre-built index, right? So what you're looking at here is a pre-built index for the whole website. Right? You analyze the website content, analyze in the build process, in the build process, it analyzes all your website content, do some of the like text analyze, and actually build an index for like those characters, so you can kind of, without going to the server, it give you illusion you have the search capability, but under the hood is basically just you're still not leaving this domain. You're not leaving this. You're not leaving this website. You still kind of have the illusion. You're under the same page, under the control of the same domain. There's a lot of caveats, right? There's also like vulnerabilities, the weakness of this model, because a lot of like virus, like malware, is explore those kind of dynamic behaviors of JavaScript. Like if you look at all the advertisements, you can see like any like the publishers has those advertisers. They have those advertisements hosted. Right? Like every time, even some of them are intelligent to user profiling. Right? Like different people look at maybe New York Times homepage, you get different advertisements. And if you are a student, you may get like some coupons or some like merchandise, like some advertisement for school, whatever that is. But if you're older people, you may get something about what appealing to your age. If you want to buy a car, if you just have something add to your card, right? But you didn't check out, there is a whole business of kind of targeting those users, which has the buying behavior intention but didn't finish the purchase, and you get specifically targeted by serving you ads to kind of remind you to finish your purchase. Or even competitors will going to offer you like if you buy something more like valuable, like have a big ticket price, like buy a car or buy like some like electronics, right? Like some laptop or machines, you may get you'll see, right? You probably also feel like when you surf online, like you get the advertisement is kind of following you everywhere. So those are definitely not static, because your data is spread around across all the data services around the internet. So people have real concerns around that, like for like privacy, also like data issues. It is, I think recently, like people start to see. Probably we can go back, right? See like the good old words of just making things static, right? If you don't need those to be dynamic, you don't need those data to be calling out to the servers multiple times. So I think some of the websites start to actually probably provide you with some if you are like privacy notice. You see some of the websites like, to give you what it actually what is actually synchronized, like what data is shared with multiple like data collection vendors, things like that. There are laws starting to be making, like CCP privacy laws, and like there's GDPR, like universe, like from Europe, trying to give the customers the rights to see. You can know what's your information used by business and how they use. You can request to delete your information with some exceptions. So those are real details, and how to opt out right, from the marketing emails and information. So those translate to actual technical things. So those really are starting to become like projects within those companies. Right? In the past, if there's no laws like those within a company, like the data, how the data is governed, is is kind of not clear, but recently those requirements at least is not perfect but started to bubble up. I think in the future those things will come more and more. Like people start to, I think for the generation, at least my parents' generation, they don't even know those concepts. Right? they don't know what is a web application, what is difference with like this icon and this is a browser, this is a native app, this is right. They don't even have a concept of the data, how the data is shared. You need to log in, the credentials, right, or the password, or your purchase, your private information, your bank account, this type of things. And I believe, right, like your generation, right, when you grow up, the internet becomes I think it's going to be a much different place. Like there are much more things going to be connected, maybe very critical things, right? Like Internet of Things, all the machines we use at home or at work, all the infrastructures are going to already linked up. So like how the data is going to be passed around and shared around has become much more important. And people may start to care more, especially maybe your generation care more. So probably that's too much, around 1 minute. But this is also like some initial thinkings about like doing like a small application like this, right? Maybe you don't need like a full-featured bookmark application like Evernote or like Google Keep or whatever that to get your data in the cloud and trust them. Like it actually is like for those kind of applications for existing tools, right? You probably can already build something locally just for yourself and organize things that way. Cool. I think that's the time. So next one will be our last one. I hope you learned something, and probably next time, if you have questions, we can have like more discuss. But I think it's that's a wrap for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.